It'd be really fun to hear a paleontologist rank the Jurassic Park movies.
Again, like I want to love these movies.
Scarlett Johansson is no Chris Pratt.
This movie made nods back to so many of the other Jurassic Park movies.
There's probably a good version of this movie, but they just keep screwing up the easy parts, having good story, good dialogue, good characters.
So I found the paleontologist Harry Loomis to be a lovable egghead.
All that they really need is a good script and maybe like a 4-year-old to call the scientific inaccuracies that we're about to mention, right? A good science consultant and directors and producers that will listen to them.
I was really hoping for a little notch up after Dominion and just didn't get it. In fact, I thought it was worse.
Harry says, I'm telling you, it's a sin to kill a dinosaur. Is it a sin to be a poor steward?
In Malcolm's statement, we don't have dominion. We are subject basically to the world around us. So completely turning a biblical concept on its head.
I did not think it was the worst Jurassic World movie. I thought that the worst Jurassic World movie was...
In a world where entertainment is viewed as mindless diversion, only good for momentary distraction, you are about to enter a new world, and you will never view entertainment in the same way again. This is Popcorn Theology.
Welcome, movie lovers and theology nerds and dinosaur geeks, to Popcorn Theology, where we examine films for where they align with the greatest story and our greatest storyteller, discussing what to receive, reject, and redeem for common ground, fruitful conversation, and mindful movie consumption. I'm David.
And I'm Marcus.
That's right. For those perhaps longtime listeners will remember Dr. Marcus Ross has joined us for almost all of the Jurassic episodes that we've covered. And we're going to pick up all the pieces here today. So thanks for coming back, Marcus.
Oh, it's delightful to be back. Thanks so much. We've got a lot to talk about.
Yes, absolutely. And so Dr. Ross is a paleontologist, professor, author, and rock jockey, I guess. Is that a good word for your other job?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. And so educational supply company, fossil rocks extraordinaire, all kinds of, great supplies. And so we'll mention a bit more of that in a moment. We also got to make sure we mention your new book, because I have a copy of it somewhere.
Oh, thanks.
So excellent. Nice. But before we get too far down that rabbit hole, we want to let our audience know we are looking at Jurassic World Rebirth, directed by Gareth Edwards and starring Scarlett Johansson, Mahershala Ali, Jonathan Bailey, Rupert Friend, and Manuel Garcia Rulfo. That was a workout. That lineup there. And Marcus, you want to go ahead and give us a little bit of a plot summary for those who may be trying to decide whether to see this, or maybe they've already just blocked it out and forgotten what happened in this movie.
All right. So it's been 32 years since dinosaurs were first introduced, going back to the original Jurassic Park. And it's been 7 years or so, something like that, since InGen went bankrupt. And now the world's remaining dinosaurs they're dying out, save a few that are living close to the equator. So what we have is Martin Krebs. He's with a biotech company called Parkergenics, and they want to cure heart disease. And what they need are samples from 3 Jurassic World animals in order to make that happen. So what are they going to do? Of course, they're going to hire some ex-Special Forces operatives, starting with Dora Bennett, and she's going to put together a team. They're also going to bring on paleontologist Henry Loomis, and they're going to bring them to an abandoned InGen facility, a research laboratory, experimental stuff, and that's going to be on the Isle Saint-Hubert, so that they can try and retrieve samples from 3 different organisms. And along the way, of course, they end up rescuing the Delgado family, whose boat was being attacked by a Mosasaurus and some associated Spinosauruses. Now, of course, this is Jurassic World, and this means that things are not going to go quite according to plan. The whole group ends up getting shipwrecked and split apart on Isle de Saint-Hubert, and they're desperately trying to get the samples and desperately trying to get off the island.
Nice. Good summary, and good job on the French pronunciation. I was confused why this wasn't Site B. seemed like it should be Site B, Isla Sorna or Nublar. But anywho,
yeah. Now that they're throwing, we had all the Spanish islands, off the coast of Costa Rica, but now we've got somewhere out in the Caribbean, I guess, maybe, or off of, I don't know, wherever the French owned, Ile Saint Hubert.
There you go.
Interestingly enough, just a little point of curiosity on that, I was looking it up. Saint Hubert, or Saint Hubert, is the patron saint of hunters. So there's no doubt a connection for why they chose Ile Saint Hubert, which is not a real island. It's the Jurassic World island. So yes, the patron saint of hunters doesn't bode well for our cast.
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess the hunters are the dinosaurs, because clearly none of the cast were effective hunters, nor were they there to hunt necessarily.
Wouldn't even say that we necessarily had a clever girl at it either.
No, I would have to agree with that. But before we drop a spoiler warning, we're going to kind of get into some spoiler-free ratings. At Popcorn Theology, we evaluate movies on the, sort of the popcorn side, the spectacle, what we thought of it on a casual side, and then on the theology side. And the theology ratings are more on the talking points and the depth of the themes. And so first, we've got popcorn ratings of stale, fresh, and buttered and salted, basically bad, good, or great. So, Marcus, what are you thinking for Jurassic World Rebirth?
It was pretty stale. It was quite stale. There were occasional little buttered bits in there, and they were really nice to get. But on the whole, boy, I hate to say it because I love Jurassic Park. I love the movies. I love dinosaurs. But man, did this movie underperformed.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I thought it was stale. That being said, it wasn't quite as chewy as I expected. I was able to get through it. You
reached the bottom of the bag.
Yeah, I got to the bottom. It was kind of fun to watch. I enjoyed parts of it. There's plenty of spectacle. The story was nuts, but that happens with these movies for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it literally is one of the summer popcorn films, right? I mean, it's supposed to get us in during the hot days. It's supposed to get you eating popcorn. If you got popcorn, you might as well eat it. Don't throw it at the screen. It's not that kind of bad. No. But there were a few, boo hiss moments as we go through. But overall, yeah, I think I agree with you. It's just, it was silly, kind of fun, but at the same time, not that great.
Yeah. It's not a walk out the movie kind of movie. Although I don't know if I've ever done that. I'm usually like, I paid the money, I'm going to see this, maybe it'll get better. I'm not going to walk out partway through a movie. And I'd advise you not also not to. All right. So next we got the theology rating. So yeah, we both said it was stale quality wise, but in terms of, things to talk about, it could be diluted, meaning that there's maybe one or two talking points, carbonated, meaning that there's a fair bit, or my cup runneth over, just incredibly deep with themes. And what do you think, Marcus? Where would you put this in terms of discussion points?
I'd say that the soda fountains mix was off on this one. There wasn't enough syrup or carbonation coming in on this one. There were a couple of themes. Often I would say they were mostly the tropes of Jurassic Park movie themes as it is. So there wasn't much new to think about in this film, aside from a couple of things. But really the talking points for the movie coming out of it was like, no, there's not a whole lot that this added into it and didn't make me think, even as much as I didn't like Jurassic World Dominion with its, dueling bad plot lines. There was a component of that was still bringing in at least some fresh aspects or new ways of thinking about the long arc of the Jurassic World, themes, concepts, ideas. And this one, Rebirth, just didn't do it for me.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. I would say diluted, but once again, there were a couple bubbles hanging in there. It wasn't sitting there flat for a week. It just gone flat and diluted. And so there were a few, I think, good lines, few good jumping off points, but it was, let's just say, not deep enough for the mosasaur to swim in. So yeah,
that's true.
Excellent. So we're going to get into the sort of a little bit more of our thoughts in just a moment. But first, we do want to encourage our listeners to, if you like what you hear, go ahead and like and share this episode with your friends. We want to broaden the conversation. If you want to hear more, go ahead and subscribe on YouTube, follow us on social media. And one really quick and helpful way to support the podcast is to just give us a rating and review, preferably 5 stars, but whatever you think we're worth, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen. That's incredibly helpful in terms of the ratings, getting the word out there. But also another option is to support us financially through Patreon for just a few dollars a month. This gives you access to a bunch of exclusive benefits. Facebook group lets you, exclusive Facebook group. We've got exclusive content. You can interact. You can vote on future episodes. Lots of good stuff. And also we have free stickers. You can read more in the description about how you get some free stickers. But also I wanted to hand it over to Marcus. Tell us a little bit about what you do and what our listeners can do if they want to support you or find out more about the rock jockeying, as I call it.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to plug, David. So I run Cornerstone Educational Supply. My wife and I started this company 10 years ago. So we're actually celebrating our 10-year anniversary at Cornerstone. My wife likes to call us the stuff people. So we and David, you've kindly purchased some of our stuff in the past for your classes at the schools that you've taught at. So we produce science educational materials. So if you're looking for a dead frog or a beaker, hey, we've got that stuff. Heck, today I just took in 200 dissection shark specimens. So yeah, a whole pallet of dead sharks. That's pretty wild stuff. So we start off with geology materials, but we do biology, chemistry, physics, engineering, the whole gamut of it. And I've been running Cornerstone Educational Supply full-time now for 4 years. Prior to that, I was a college professor like our dear David is over here. And let's see, one thing that you can find on that, because here on Popcorn Theology, you guys are all about integrating, Christian theology and concepts of the Lord and orienting our mind towards, what's out there in the world. I've got a book that I just published called Perspectives on the Historical Adam and Eve. Oh, hey, what a plug there. Thank you, David.
There you go. I happen to be next to my bookshelf. So
it's a debate in a book. I'm one of 4 authors who are arguing about whether or not Adam and Eve were actually historical individuals. How would we understand the Bible and science together in some way? So I represent a young earth creation view on that. There are 3 other perspectives. We all get to duke it out and argue our cases, but it's a very cordial conversation in the book, which was really delightful to be part of. So that's some of the stuff that I do: science supplies and science faith interaction.
Yeah, absolutely. Strongly recommend that book, Perspectives on the Historical Adam and Eve. And I'm trying to think of the easiest way to find that because there's so many authors.
You can find that right at Cornerstone Educational Supply. Find us at cornerstone-edsupply.com.
Excellent.
Cinemagog, The Marvelous Era. James Harleman here, the cinema guy, announcing the sequel to my first book on film and faith. Let's face it, entertainment has changed dramatically since the first book published in 2012, and comic book characters and franchises are everywhere. So I decided to set my sights on superheroes and examine the evolution of Hollywood in this follow-up to the first Cinemagog book. For example, what does Loki tell us about culture's view of God? Why does the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Infinity Saga continually align with biblical themes? In the Marvelous Era, I review each film and show not only how the individual movies express gospel parallels, but each phase essentially reveals a multi-point sermon. I also explore DC, Star Wars, the Monsterverse, and more. Without compromising scriptural truth, we can sift these stories and discover how we might reject, receive, and redeem ideas for personal reflection and Christian conversation. Also, has Hollywood's messaging gotten worse? The book explores ways these marvelous mythologies correspond with conversion, Christian living, church history, and Reformation, but I do also highlight what has been the entertainment industry's darker, indoctrinating decade, as well as toxic fandom and the dangers of immersion in pop culture that just might drown us spiritually if we're not careful. So suit up, assemble, and join me on a journey to the Infinity Saga and beyond. Cinemagog, The Marvel Us Era. Now available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle editions. Hey, this is James, and if you're listening to Popcorn Theology, it's because you're interested in movies, or theology, or best of all, both. And that probably means you're our kind of people, sharing things in common with our community, and maybe sharing common interests our listeners and viewers would be interested in as well. So why not partner with us and advertise your business or ministry right here on Popcorn Theology? We're looking for great, like-minded sponsors and offer reasonable rates with a variety of formats to get your message out. Remember, our fans aren't mindless consumers, so they'll give you thoughtful consideration. That's a big part of what we're all about. So for more information on advertising with us, contact info@popcorntheology.com.
Very good. So we're going to go ahead and get into our popcorn thoughts. But first, we're going to drop our spoiler warning here because, we want to talk in depth about this movie, or as in depth as one can about this movie, without worrying about spoiling the plot. And so this is your last warning. We're going to spoil plot points and opinions going forward. And so, but before we get to kind of expanding on why we thought it was stale, I thought it might be good to kind of put this film in context of the entire franchise. And I was torn with how to approach this because there's so many movies at this point and so many opinions floating around. But I thought it'd be really fun to hear a paleontologist rank the Jurassic Park movies and kind of evaluate them a little bit mostly on the popcorn side, a little bit on the scientific accuracy side if we like. But I'm curious because I have my own list and you have a list here. What are we thinking in terms of the best of them, of the Jurassic Park movies?
Well, I think that's a great lead into to framing the rest of our discussion here today, David. That's a great idea. Jurassic Park, the original, there's just no comparison. It is literally in a league of its own. It completely changed the movie-going experience. That was the first movie I was ever at on opening night. I was in high school. It was my junior year, and it's hard to convey to those who weren't there what it was like to be at that film. Opening night, there were probably 4 screens at the multiplex carrying it. Every single showing was sold out. And you were just kind of hoping when you got there that you could get a ticket somewhere for the night. So I'm in this, big theater with probably 400 some odd people. And it was just electric. And the movie delivered. I watched Jurassic Park a couple of years ago before Dominion came out because I wanted to show my kids the original movie. And I think we talked about this in a previous episode, just so impressed with how Jurassic Park, the original film, holds up 32 years later. This movie is still heart-pounding and it set the bar for everything else. So number 1 is Jurassic Park. I don't know if maybe you thought JP3 was the top. So
no. I think it's by leaps and bounds of a Velociraptor, leaps and bounds ahead of all of the other ones is Jurassic Park. And that's not, I don't think, too controversial. That's the top. And the question then becomes, what is the worst? But we'll get to that. What would you put as the second best? I'm really curious how all of this plays out.
For me, there was just something so much fun about Jurassic World that I would end up putting that in my number 2 slot. And I was super skeptical because I remember seeing the movie posters with Chris Pratt on a motorcycle with raptors and just burying my head in my hands thinking, this is going to be nuts. This is, what are they doing? But like, by the time you get to that scene, I'm like ready to hop out of my chair. I'm like, let's go, man. Let's do this. So, I think they captured a lot of the fun of Jurassic Park in Jurassic World. So, and Chris Pratt is just such a delightful actor. He's so good at what he does. I thought that was probably the number 2. What about you? Where would you put your number 2?
I'm surprised to hear you say that because, we've known each other for a while, since before any of the Jurassic World movies came out, though not as far back as Jurassic Park 3. And I really thought you would have put the original 3 at the top. I actually put Jurassic Park 2 as my number 2. So the Lost World Jurassic Park, to be clear, because the names get all weird. So I put that as my number 2. I will say that I put Jurassic World as number 3. And I would say for the same reasons on Jurassic World, it goes ahead of all the other ones. It's a blast. It's super fun to watch. I gave Lost World a slight edge over it simply because there's a nostalgia factor in that one for me. Didn't see it opening night in the theater, I don't think, but it was the movie that was the go-to anytime that me and my friends would hang out, anytime there was like a birthday party or, if someone had a sleepover or something like that. It was always the Lost World Jurassic Park. And so we watched that one a lot, and it holds up. I rewatched a number of these kind of in preparation for this episode, and rewatching that one kind of bumped it up in my list. One of the other ones, rewatching, bumped it down in my list. So there's that.
But which one was that? Which one dropped down after rewatching?
Well, they bounced around a lot. I have a hard time categorizing things, but it was Dominion. Rewatching Dominion, I was like, man, this is so much worse than I thought.
Yeah, that was near the bottom of my list as well.
Yeah, it's a rough one.
I picked Jurassic Park after, Jurassic Park 2 came in for me after Jurassic World.
Okay.
And I did like Jurassic Park 2. I thought it was tons of fun. I love that they killed Robert Bacher, who's a known paleontologist. They killed him on screen.
Yeah.
Apparently because he was blabbing his mouth and claiming that he had been involved as an unpaid consultant on the first movie. So Spielberg decides, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to kill you on screen. And so like that was great. They
make a little dig at him in the first one too.
What's that?
They make a very slight dig at him in the first movie too. No pun intended.
Actually, he gets a compliment from Timmy. Timmy goes up to Alan Grant and is like, "I've got this other book from Bacher, and his book is a lot thicker than yours."
Oh yeah.
And all of us watching at that time, who are old enough to be like reading one of Robert Bacher, we all have that book. It's the Dinosaur Heresies. It's a absolutely classic treatise on dinosaurs that was published in the mid '80s and was part of the dinosaur renaissance. The whole reason that we think of dinosaurs as active, fast-moving, warm-blooded, high metabolism types of creatures, or at least possibly being in that level, is because of Bacher and some of his colleagues at the time. And Bacher was illustrating things in just these dramatic poses, and you're like, wow. And as a kid or as a young student in paleontology, these things were just grab your attention. And Bacher had a lot of good ideas. He had a lot of crazy ideas, but he also, it seemed, had a bit of a mouth and kind of blabbed about what he was responsible for. And but I did find that Jurassic Park 2 got really silly at the end when you brought the T-Rex into San Francisco. I mean, as much as I liked him chasing a bunch of Japanese guys like he's Gojira, still I remember thinking like, this is funny, but wow, this is dumb. But I suppose that could be said of a lot of the after Jurassic Park, most of the movies you could have some points of saying this is really funny and boy, this is really dumb.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's the hardest part, I thought, even just in ranking things. I don't usually rank things well because they're all just so distinct. But the trick was, okay, there's stuff I love in every one of these movies, and there's stuff I hate in almost every one of these movies, just because it's so poorly written. It's so weird. It makes no sense, or they just missed an opportunity or something. And so the question was kind of like tipping the scales. At what point does this outweigh that? But yeah, so it sounds like we're on the same page. Jurassic Park 2 and Jurassic World are kind of flip-flop there for us. And then where would you put after The Lost World?
For that, I put Jurassic Park 3. And I know I'm an outlier on that because a lot of people didn't like Jurassic Park 3. I think like you, for me, this one's a nostalgia factor. I went to this on opening night with 2 other paleontology buddies, my fiance and one of their significant others. And we had a ball. We just absolutely loved watching the Spinosaurus, with the stupid little phone in its belly, terrorizing everybody. Did the plot make much sense? No, but it was also short, sweet, and to the point. It was people were on the island running away from dinosaurs for about like 90 minutes. It was a fairly short one. And William H. Macy was in there. It was not too bad. It was okay. And that was the first time that pterosaurs showed up, which was actually pretty cool. And I thought the Spinosaurus T-Rex battle in that one was really impressive. I mean, it really was like, there's a new big bad guy in town, and it's a Spinosaurus, and he just, lays waste eventually to the T-Rex. I thought that was shocking and fun. Don't think about the movie too long at all. But after that, I think, sadly that puts Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, Jurassic Park 2, Jurassic Park 3 in the top 4 slots. And what ends up happening for the last three. They're all Jurassic World versions, right?
Yeah.
I've got Fallen Kingdom, Dominion, and Rebirth in that order for my, bottom of the barrel there. Fallen Kingdom, I loved the first half of it. I thought it was really fun, trying to get off of the island, which is being destroyed. The scene with the death of the Brachiosaurus,
that was heartbreaking.
It really, I mean, there was a lot that was really evocative in that. And then by the time you come off and you're at the, the mansion, now it's auctioning off dinosaurs to, third world dictators or something. That doesn't, evil corporations. I hate to say it, I run a corporation now. Cornerstone is technically a corporation. Apparently we're willing to kill the world in order to get our stuff bought by nobody who's left. I don't know. Dominion was a disaster. They just, really forced their way with two. I wish that they would have spent their money on one plot that worked rather than two that just couldn't get their act together. The biotech companies with hordes of mutant locusts. It was sad. That said, the dinosaurs in Dominion were incredible. They were, the best of the entire series. And a lot of cool stuff they brought in, the Therizinosaur with all this downy fluff that had cataracts and was blind. Like, it was a scary animal because, you and I were both paleontologists. You said, we're bringing a paleontologist. No, popcorn theology folks out there. David and I are the Highlander of paleontology. Same clan, different vintage, because we both got our master's degree from the same place in paleo.
This is true.
So, good old South Dakota School of Mines, the Hard Rockers.
Go Hard Rockers, yeah.
Hard Rockers. So, Fallen Dominion just it visually had so much going for it, but it was also just ridiculous. And then we have what we're here to talk about today is Rebirth, and I was really hoping for a little notch up after Dominion, and just didn't get it. In fact, I thought it was worse. What about you? We're down to the bottom three. What are you ranking things?
Yeah, I would say same for the bottom three. Yeah, Jurassic Park 3, rewatched it recently, and I was like, this is pretty good. Like, this is okay. It was straightforward. It didn't fall into a lot of the tropes that the other ones have, which is nice. There was not really a super clear bad guy. It was just kind of man versus nature. Essentially is what that one came down to. And that was a little bit refreshing given the formula that we'll talk about more in a moment with these other movies. But I did think it was funny because we put these bottom three in a slightly different order. For all the reasons you just mentioned, I put Jurassic World Dominion at the top of those three. And it pained me to do that because you're right. The plot stinks. Like, the subplot with Tim Cook as just weird bumbling bad guy, like, awful. Dodgson? Really? The Dodgson that we see in the first Jurassic Park? Anyway, so yeah, that was horrible. Just so bad. Monsanto's the bad guy, basically, is what it came down to. But
Monsanto's not even a company and hasn't been a company for like a long time. They got bought out.
It hasn't. It got bought out, and when it was a company, it was roughly on the scale of Whole Foods in terms of the net worth of the company. It was not enough to buy dinosaurs, right? Like, none of that. But the things I loved about Dominion, I loved the whole sequence. I think it was in Malta with like the underground trading and they're chasing the dinosaurs through the streets. I was like, okay, this whole sequence could be a movie, and I would watch the heck out of that movie. And you're right. All the stuff, all the portrayals of all the dinosaurs was excellent. The opening sequence, even the ending scene where it's showing them kind of interacting, just like elephants going across the Serengeti, and then there's a Triceratops among them. I'm like, this is golden. But the story was just so bad. But I had to bump it up a little bit because of that. I then put, believe it or not, Jurassic World Rebirth second from the bottom. I did not think it was the worst Jurassic World movie. I thought that the worst Jurassic World movie was Fallen Kingdom. I agree. Some of the spectacle in the first half was really cool, but I was so burnt out on the plot of being exactly the same. Like, oh, I wonder if they're going to weaponize a dinosaur. You can't just make a new dinosaur. Well, you just did, and you're going to do it again. So I just, from a writing perspective, thought it was awful. But yeah, Rebirth, I mean, it was a hard sell. I mean, it was really, a race to the bottom, if you will, in terms of those last few movies. But it's funny because I noticed that your lineup is actually remarkably similar to the IMDb ratings. It's a site called Rating Graph where they'll take the IMDb ratings and they have them ranked from top to bottom as Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, The Lost World Jurassic Park, and then, believe it or not, Fallen Kingdom gets us. Oh, actually, yeah, these people are weird. They put Rebirth, then Fallen Kingdom, then JP3, then Dominion.
At least they got Dominion some time for a few more reviews to come out, maybe.
Yeah, it's a little soon to tell. Exactly.
But yeah, that is interesting. Jurassic Park 3 got killed at the box office by the reviewers at the time. They really thought it was just sad retread. And I think they missed the fun of it, like you said. So yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's a neat tool actually from IMDb too.
Yeah, it's pretty slick. I did also check. I will say you're much, much, much closer to the critic ratings on Rotten Tomatoes. The way you've ranked them is the only difference is that they, for some reason, Jurassic World Rebirth is in fourth place on that one, right after Lost World Jurassic Park. Aside from that, your ratings are in the same order as the critics. And so it seems like you're a little closer to the critical side than the public ratings that are on IMDb. So anyway, data nerding over on that one. I will agree, though, that these movies all have something fun about them, something good about them. And I think maybe the most frustrating part is that the parts that they screw up are the easy parts. They can't get a story. They can't get compelling characters right consistently. But what they can get right is the stuff that costs hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Like all the spectacle, all of that stuff, they're generally crushing it. And so it's just frustrating that the stuff that's easy gets messed up. But there is a bit of a formula to any of these movies. And, maybe we'll talk about that a bit more in the context of the thing we're actually here to discuss, which is Jurassic World Rebirth. And so, Marcus, you called it stale and you put it at the very bottom of your list. Now, I'm curious if there's anything about it that you liked or just any ranting you want to get off your chest at this point, any standout moments or standout terrible moments. Basically, overall thoughts on Rebirth.
Well, I was there as I almost always am opening night. I think I only missed one opening night of a Jurassic movie, and it was because I was literally out of town. I was like, I have to watch it with my wife. I got to go out together, type of thing.
Nice.
And I was also there with my daughter and her boyfriend, and so we're sitting out there. He's going to be enlisting in the military. And so he's, chattering to my daughter on one end about all the goofy stuff that the seemingly astonishingly good spec ops folks are doing. All wrong, right? People are like, oh yeah, I've been 10 years in Marine Corps spec ops. He did note to me, he's like, they don't have any women in the Marine spec ops units that she mentions that she was in for 10 years. Like there's never been a woman in it. That's fine. Whatever. It's Scarlett Johansson. I think that's one of the problems actually that I had with her.
She was just deep undercover.
Yeah. Right. I think that everybody knows Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow, and her character development in that series is outstanding. Lots and lots of time to work on it. And in this movie, it just felt like they just leaned on Marvel to have created a character for them. And we're supposed to look at Scarlett Johansson and just go, well, of course she's Spec Ops, right? She's Black Widow. And if you actually watch...
I would rather her have been Black Widow in this movie. Like just costume and all, just completely... Black Widow would have been interesting in this movie. She just... Yeah. Anyway.
Instead, we got basically kind of a mall cop version of Black Widow without the Paul Blart.
Paul Blart, Jurassic World. I love it.
That one might actually work. If you lean into this with Paul Blart,
I'm sure Kevin Smith would do it. I can't imagine him.
I think he would. I think that would be fantastic. So let me see here. I'm trying to think about, the high points. I mean, there were certainly some high points. I thought that there were some places where this movie made nods back to so many of the other Jurassic Park franchise movies in ways that I noticed. even very, very subtle ones. I'll give you a subtle example. And that was as they're about to go in and see the big Titanosaur, the big, huge sauropod dinosaur, they start walking into this field of tall grass. Now, you mentioned Jurassic Park 2. So, like, what were you thinking as soon as you saw
Not the tall grass. So what I was thinking, not the tall grass. And I was thinking, vividly remember this in the theater because I brought my y'all go ahead and judge. I brought my 9-year-old son with me to see this. And it was his first like intense movie. And I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. And when they went out in the field, there had already been a few jump scares at this point.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of like geared up for him to like jump and freak out. And so I was like, tall grass, buddy. And so I was geared up for it to go a different way. So yeah, that stood out to me as well.
So that was a neat way in which they referred back to the previous movies and actually played against the type. I'm expecting raptors to jump. This is the killing fields. I mean, this is bad in Jurassic Park 2. So nobody comes out of here. So that was good, but like, overall, like this movie was rough. I didn't have high expectations going in, but I was hoping that things would turn out better than they did. So like in this case, let's see, it's How the Mighty Have Fallen. I mean, not fallen, like How the Mighty Have Fallen. I can't be all negative. So what did I like in this movie? I liked the paleontologist. I liked Harry Loomis as a character.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I say that like he was fine. He was an okay guy, and he did grow on you a bit better. He had some really good moments in the movie where you're like, oh, this is a good guy. Or he was really funny. There's a couple of scenes in there where he's just really funny. And, that was great. So he had some comedic elements. His scene with the Titanosaurs, at first I was like, this is getting kind of sappy. But then all of a sudden when he comes in and touches the leg and he gets this sense of just complete peace and euphoria, it was so good. It was, it turned that scene around for me. Cause at first I was honestly just mentally kvetching about how too big everything was. We'll get to that. But, he drew us in for that scene. That was a great bit of acting right there.
So I found the paleontologist Harry Loomis to be a lovable egghead in the film. Another character that I thought was pretty decent was Duncan Kincaid. He's the captain of the boat in the mercenary crew. And he was likable enough. He has some scenes that show a little bit of depth to him, and he plays, a somewhat heroic character. After that, the development of the characters was pretty lame. Other things I did like, there were a lot of good dinosaur cameos. We got some really nice reminders of some of the great former cast of Jurassic Park and Jurassic World. Dilophosaurus, with its big, neck frill that pops out, got a nice nod. Plus an Ankylosaurus, which, brings us into Jurassic World. There's some pterosaurs from Jurassic World that show up momentarily. And of course, there's a velociraptor for an extraordinarily brief period of time.
Yeah, almost like a cameo, right?
In fact, I'd say it's probably even just a cam because it was on screen for just mere seconds.
And he was out of focus the whole time. And he gets picked off by that thing. I don't know what else to call it.
Mutodon, apparently.
Oh, they gave him names? Oh,
they gave him name. Yeah, they actually gave it a name that you wouldn't know, from the movie. I had to look it up. But apparently Mutodon, the raptor pterosaur hybrid type of thing. I like how they said
something about them being too hard to look at. I was like, that describes a lot of these things. They were hard to look at. Not what you want in a movie, but anyway.
Well, like the dinosaurs, there were also a lot of nods. We mentioned the tall grass, but there were also like one of the early scenes when the museum is being decommissioned. You get when Dinosaur ruled the world. That banner is coming down just like it was at the end of Jurassic Park.
That was cool.
You get Martin Krebs, our bad guy, who's working for Parkergenics. His frantic Jeep ride down to try to get to a boat is, plot-wise reminiscent, similar, identical to Nedry's wild ride. But there were also there were some, I thought, really some nice little buttery, salty bits of popcorn sprinkled all around with these nice little nods. And every once in a while, like if you know the franchise, you pick them up and you see them. And the main prehistoric critters, as we kind of go through, were pretty good. I mean, the Mosasaurus was still there. The accompanying Spinosauruses were modeled really well. And the T-Rex, finally gets a river scene. And maybe a lot of your viewers don't know this, but T-Rex in a river happens in the original Jurassic Park book. And it goes after a bunch of people there.
I think I forgot about that.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, there was a whole river sequence that gets cut out of the movie, but I do remember that in the book.
Yeah. So Spielberg was never able to get that in. It was, the movie was already big enough. And so T-Rex never got this scene. And the way that they modeled it swimming in the river was really cool. Now, I don't think that river really would have been able to handle a T-Rex, but sure, whatever.
Right.
They do it. And even the Quetzalcoatlus, the big pterosaur that they have for this one, is modeled very nicely. And I think the scene with it in its nest area was genuinely a fun one. It was a good action sequence, trying not to die and trying to, get the samples that we needed. So, those were some of the things that I thought that worked. What were some high points for you, David?
Yeah, so I love that you were mentioning the nods, because there were definitely some to the original that stood out to me. One, when we first see the bad guy, which we could tell he's the bad guy as soon as we see him. Right.
He's wearing the same outfit that our initial bad guy was in Jurassic Park.
Really?
What's his name?
Dodson.
Dodson. Yeah, he's wearing that. He's wearing that white shirt,
the Hawaiian, or the hat or whatever.
And he's got a hat.
Oh,
and
man.
The first thing I thought was, that's Dobson, right?
We got Dobson here.
Dobson here.
Yeah.
We got Dobson. So I thought that was
awesome.
nice. That was a neat nod.
I loved when we first see him, it's in the mirror. It says objects mirror closer than they appear.
Yep.
Little nitpick. It's on the driver's side. That only appears on the passenger side. But anyway, that was one. I had a list. Where's the rest of my list? I made of these little flashbacks. There was, the fact that there's a broken leg that conveniently broken when it needs to be, but not at other times. The convenience store scene, very reminiscent of the kitchen scene. They were clearly going for that. The use of flares, obviously, and characters leading dinosaurs away. And the ending where the dolphins are going. I mean, there's always a helicopter, same music, helicopter away from the island, and some extant, usually non-extinct animal that is making its way and reminding them that the world is still a place worth living in. But yeah, as far as the nods, I loved those. In terms of the overall things I did enjoy about the movie, I will agree that I liked Harry Loomis. I thought he was a really likable character. As the movie went on, I was like, I like him more and more than I did initially. I loved the Donkleosteus. That was another little not a dinosaur, but another prehistoric creature nod that I was not expecting. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, and for those who aren't familiar with our nerddom in paleontology, Dunkleosteus is like this gigantic weird fish head that is found in the middle of a net full of fish when they drop it. And Dunkleosteus is this fish that had basically an armored front third to its body, and so the head is just solid bone, and even the teeth of Dunkleosteus are made actually of its skull bones. So it's this freakishly weird looking thing. You'll find it at most natural history museums because there's copies of it like everywhere. But that was pretty cool. Like, wait a minute, there's Dunkleosteus in the ocean? Like, wow, cool.
Yeah, I love that all that stuff was there. I also thought, as far as the paleontologist goes, his dream of, my dream is to die in a shallow sea and get covered up with silt. I was like, okay, that's amazing. That's what he would say. Yeah, they had a decent consultant on some of his lines
for that one. So that line came either from Stephen Brusette or from Tom Holtz, who were the two consultants on this one.
Oh man, well, we got to nitpick the consultants here in a minute, though. But I will say this: I went into this movie blind. I didn't see any of the trailer. I somehow managed to avoid all the trailers. I looked away. I changed the channel. I avoided them, and I don't think it helped a lot. But it didn't mean that I walked in blind with no expectations, and that was fun. It was really cool. But again, I think there's a good draft of this movie out there. I think there might even be a good cut of this movie, right? Like if they released a director's cut, like there's probably a good version of this movie, but they just keep screwing up the easy parts, having good story, good dialogue, good characters. We have a couple good characters, but there's a whole lot of just dumb and shallow stuff. This could have been a really, really good movie, but they just, they dropped the ball on that. But what about, Yeah, so you're mentioning things that you appreciated about the movie, and so let's go ahead and get some gripes out of the way. What didn't work for you?
Oh boy, let me count the ways. But things that didn't work, most everything else. And again, like I want to love these movies. Jurassic Park was just so, both the book and the movie were so instrumental in fiction, in Hollywood, and for a whole generation of paleontologists that would come, in almost 2 generations, really, right? These movies have been going on for a long time. I mean, the character development, is really poor. Dora Bennett isn't Black Widow, but they expect us to think that she is, and she does nothing to kind of earn our respect out of that. Yeah. My daughter's boyfriend mentioning just the fact that she spends the entire movie, wearing like a utility vest with nothing in it. She has no gun. She has no bullets. She has no armor. Like, this is an armor pack. It's deep cut because, of course, she's female. These things should be, up on the top of your neck. But why would you even want this? There's nothing that's going to shoot you on the island. So first thing you should do is drop this piece of equipment. So she was not compelling, and the dad was okay. He was only okay. If this had been a drinking game and we had to take a shot every time he told his little daughter, it's going to be okay, I've got you, right? Yeah. I would have been on the floor looking at the different colors of gum. I mean, it would have been rough. But yeah, we've got,
the daughter was okay. The youngest daughter was okay. The other 2 I could have done without.
Oh, exactly. I mean, the other daughter, Teresa, and her stoner boyfriend, Javier, like, in the end of the movie, like, if they had been eaten by the D-Rex, wouldn't have been an issue. Right? Yeah. I don't think the audience would, like, it would have been sad. 'Cause, like, you can't break up the family. You can't kill the family, right? Family's got to make it through. It's Jurassic Park. It's Jurassic Park.
And they've had this much screen time. That's the other rule, right? There's rules. And one of the rules in Jurassic Park is if you've had more than 30 seconds of screen time, you get to live, right? I mean, I think that's more or less, unless the first movie, right? In the first movie, they kill Muldoon. They kill off other characters that have development. But with the exception of that, there's, I think you used the expression red shirts. Characters that, if they had a name, it was mentioned in passing.
We could have used a few more red shirts, honestly.
I kind of agree.
We didn't have that many. They got offed real quick. We've got our forgetting the first scene, right, where somebody's got to be eaten by the D-Rex like 7 years ago when the facility is being apparently later abandoned. But we lose our mercenaries real quick from the boat, and we keep one of the guys along for quite a while. He makes it through a couple of scenes. And then, of course, we got to off our big bad guy at the end because you got to do that. But I'll say the kind of big picture problem for the movie is that from the very start, from the very first scene, this movie had an Alien Resurrection feel to it. And if any of your viewers have watched Alien Resurrection, like, this is not a compliment. That was a terrible movie. Alien, phenomenal. Aliens, phenomenal. Alien 3, it was all right. It was okay. Alien Resurrection, like, whoa, man. And Alien
I stopped after 3, and that's probably for the best.
Yeah, I hear good things about Prometheus, right? Sure. They're working themselves back up, but like 4 was rough. It was terrible. Don't cast Winona Ryder as your lead in an alien film. That's like, that's right up there with, Never Invaded Asia, for a land war.
It's one of the classic blunders. Yeah,
it is. Yeah. It's one of those. So, Alien Resurrection is all predicated on the idea that Ridley and the Xenomorph were destroyed and killed at the end of 3. I watched it with my own eyes. I saw it. There's nothing. They're incinerated. But somehow they get some DNA and they're trying to splice it out to separate the Ridley from the Xenomorph and get the Xenomorph. And so you end up going through like this hall of horrors of all of these jars and tubes of Bacta tanks of failed experiments that are part Ridley, part Xenomorph. And the first scene looks just like that, with all these weird dinosaurs with multiple heads and distorted bodies. Yeah. And that brings us to the Distortus Rex. The D-Rex.
That's what it's called?
Oh, yes. Geez. Oh, again, the names.
Why?
Mutodon and Distortus Rex. And then when you
That's
finally
worse than Indominus Rex, which I thought at the time was really dumb, but now I'm like, not the worst. Like,
yeah, an Indoraptor, like that was
that sounds real. That sounds like a real thing.
Yeah. I mean, that definitely sounds like a paleontologist made that one.
Yeah.
But Distortus Rex, no. And then when you finally do see the thing, it looks like alien. You're getting a serious alien vibe out of this thing with an elongate head, eyes up front, short mouth, and and then a bit of Rancor monster thrown in with it, which
that's what it was. Yeah.
And especially actually the scene where our bad guy Krebs finally gets it. Like I'm trying to think if it was him or if it was the first scene that was the guy was eaten like the Rancor monster eating the Gamorrean guard. Just off and there he goes. I remember thinking in the theater like that's like Rancor. And it's got the big grabby hands like Rancor does, but then it's got these weird two other hands in the middle of its chest, sort of like a T-Rex. So we got this hexapod thing. I mean, basically they went full on kaiju, with this kaiju alien Rancor. And I came to see Dinosaurs.
It was a King of the Monsters remake or reject. Yeah, I agree. It was very kaiju-esque in not a good way.
Big like kaiju too, right? It's like so much more massive than anything. Like in Jurassic Park 2 and 3, in Dominion, the animals are big. T-Rexes are big. Spinosauruses are big, but they scale well with people, right? To the point where you can be fearful of the T-Rex. I think the D-Rex here was so big and so alien that it's one of those, I couldn't relate to it. There was no way that I could look at this and think, yeah, somebody did this. Whereas Jurassic Park could make us believe that they'd made dinosaurs and maybe even that they'd made some weird hybrids that they shouldn't have. But this is like, it follows the basic premise of the movie. The big takeaway, I think, from this movie is right from the beginning, when we get to the museum scene, and that is that dinosaurs are boring. They say from the very beginning, it's been 32 years since Jurassic Park opened, and it's been 7 years since InGen filed for bankruptcy and was taken over by Parkergenics. Dinosaurs are so boring that museums are closing up their exhibits, and I think this movie completely leaned into its own storyline. It decided that dinosaurs are not interestingly enough to bring in the audience. We have got to bring the monstrous. We've got to bring the distortion to it. It's the only way to bring them back. Now, that does follow along with the theme in Jurassic World of constantly tinkering, and making something worse and making something bigger, bolder, badder, nastier, what have you. And this one, they've got dialed to 11, right? We got Spinal Tap on this one.
Yeah.
And it didn't, I don't think it worked at all. As a result, the real monsters, the real terrifying monsters are the dinosaurs. Yeah.
No, I agree. And that's where I liked, that's where I give Dominion kind of a, I'll give them points for this. Mm-hmm. They at least broke the mold of the last four. Basically all the Jurassic World movies were trying to create something new. Jurassic World Dominion said, hey, what if we just picked up a dinosaur book and looked for the cool stuff and put it in the movie? That was amazing. I wish that Rebirth had done that, because that would have been excellent. That could have been really cool. This could have been a great standalone, more or less standalone movie. But yeah, instead they fell into that same trap. And you're right that in the other ones, they're still making dinosaurs. They're still recognizable as dinosaurs, not as these weird kaiju things. But I did notice as well that from a story perspective, there was a greater willingness to kill these creatures than to kill the actual dinosaurs that were murdering people in all of the other films. There's this weird aversion to hurting the dinosaurs, even when they're slaughtering people, which we'll talk a little bit more about.
They're worth too much, David. They're worth millions and millions of dollars.
What are you going to do? Take a write-off on that? Are you actually asking what I would do from an accounting perspective? I love that he said that, because I'm like,
that was good.
That was a good call out, because that was a ridiculous line. So whoever wrote that line should learn from whoever wrote this line. The writing was just rough. But Yeah, in terms, and as a super quick aside, I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. Now that we're looking at that character, I love that there were, and maybe I'm the only one who noticed, the Pride and Prejudice tie-ins. First of all, Zora's Miss Bennet. Miss Bennet, they call her Miss Bennet a number of times. And who is it that calls her Miss Bennet? It's Mr. Wickham. Rupert Friend, the bad guy, plays Mr. Wickham. And I was like, oh man, this is not the first time he screwed over a Miss Bennet. But anyway.
Oh, that's a great catch.
I don't know.
Goodness.
That's quite a range in terms of film appreciation, those who would get both of those. But yeah, I would agree. There's just in general uncompelling characters, right? Scarlett Johansson is no Chris Pratt. And it's a shame because she's excellent. I love her in almost everything I've seen her in. But she didn't. Yeah, she couldn't save this movie.
She was toe-to-toe with Chris Pratt. Yeah, I mean,
she could. She did. Yeah,
she did. But, she literally did.
Yeah, but she, Chris Pratt, even in the worst parts of the worst movies, is still fun to watch. He is still interesting, and he's not goofy in like a silly way like he can be. He carried it. And there are other actors who can, and I think Scarlett Johansson could have. She was just misused. I thought Mahershala Ali, the boat captain, was misused. I thought he could have done a lot better. But my big gripe is, why is everyone so incompetent? I love what you mentioned about the military side of this. Why is everyone so bad at what they do? The scientists, the people who design the enclosures are bad at that. The scientists are bad at that. The mercenaries are bad at that. The boat captain's bad. Like, everyone's bad at what they're doing, except the family that's just trying to stumble through. They were more competent than everyone else, which is a little refreshing, but it's also very on brand with the Jurassic formula, if you will. But all that they really need is a solid script, not written by committee, a good script, and maybe like a 4-year-old to call the scientific inaccuracies that we're about to mention, right? Like, it couldn't hurt to have a good science consultant and directors and producers that will listen to them, because there was quite a bit in terms of hits and misses in this movie. And we've already done some of this, but maybe we can just kind of rapid fire through some of the things we haven't mentioned yet in terms of the balls and strikes, if you will, of the scientific content. And so was there anything that jumped out to you that was painful?
Well, it was funny because we first meet Martin Krebs in a traffic jam in New York. That's, the scene here. And the radio says the problem is that we've got a brachiosaurus that is loose, right? Got out of the zoo or whatever. Yeah. And when we see it, it's not the Jurassic World, Jurassic Park brachiosaurus. It's an apatosaurus. Now, I know there's going to be people like, come on. I mean, you guys, you're just like, no. Again, like you said, 4-year-old who knows there's dinosaurs is going to say that's wrong. But the worst part is this is canonically wrong. This is a canonical Jurassic World apatosaurus or diplodocus, like whichever one they want to call it. I think it's apatosaurus in this, but it's in Dominion. It's clearly not a brachiosaurus. They look different. They're different kinds of animals. So you get brachiosaurus in Jurassic Park, the first one, when they all stop and look and stare.
The first dinosaur that you see is actually a brachiosaurus.
And that scene was fantastic. Carried it. It was believable. And this time you look at it and you're like, if you've watched any of the other movies, you're like, that's not the right animal. So like strike 1 comes in fast, right? Yeah. And strike 2 comes in right after that when you've got the museum scene and Harry Loomis is saying, okay, we're going to need DNA from 3 dinosaurs. And he points, he says, the first one is the Mosasaurus. You're laughing.
Right out the gate, I was like, no.
And, I've got my Jurassic World Dominion Pez dispenser with a Mosasaurus on it. And I got to let your folks in on this. Like, I did my dissertation on Mosasaurs. These were my guys, right? Yeah. Mosasaurs are lizards. Like, honest to goodness lizards. Now, they're big. They're not huge. As big as Jurassic World makes them. They're 10 to 50 feet long. They're terrifying. They're some of the biggest things that have ever been in the ocean. And they're not dinosaurs. No. Never have been dinosaurs. Somebody says, oh, that's a swimming dinosaur. The 4-year-old says, no, it isn't.
No.
Right? So for the paleontologist.
Out of the mouths of babes, right? Yeah.
For Henry Loomis to point and say our first dinosaur is the Mosasaurus, my soul died just a little bit. Actually, more than a little bit, when that happened. And
I do have to quickly show off.
Minutes in.
I do have to very quickly, as long as we're on Mosasaur, show off my shirt. Audio podcast. Sorry, guys.
Oh, sweet.
I don't know if you can see it. This is my Paleontology Club shirt from School of Mines, and it's got a cowboy riding a Mosasaur. Cowboys of Science. Anyway.
That's right. I mean, they got a beautiful Mosasaur right there at the museum in South Dakota.
Wonderful.
That's where I started studying Mosasaurs, was over there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Strike 2 comes in like 15 minutes. I'm like, this is not going to go well. This is not.
And then 30 seconds after that, he says, Titanosaurus. And the other dinosaur we need to get is Quetzalcoatlus. Same mistake. So Strike 3. Pterosaur, not dinosaur. Yeah. Embarrassing.
And never mind that Titanosaurus might not actually be a taxonomically valid creature at all. That's okay.
That might be hair splitting, but the rest, yeah.
But the one dinosaur that they've picked is actually a problematic one in its own right. It's like, well, I suppose that's par for the course here. Now, kind of going through what critters do we see? We see the Spinosaurs come in next along with the Mosasaurus. And I'll get to the Mosasaurus in a minute, but the Spinosaurus, that was done really well. They were cool. It's for those who did see Jurassic Park 3, and that's not a huge number of people, as I said, right? That movie got panned. It's going to look very different from that one, because what we've learned in the scientific paleontological community about Spinosaurus has changed dramatically, continues to change. Spinosaurus is one of the most problematic animals to try and figure out how it was living. But it seems like this thing is at least semi-aquatic. It's basically a dinosaur trying to be a crocodile, plus a giant fin on its back. But it's got this really deep tail that could probably scull the water back and forth. And so the animation for this is good. So this was a solid base hit, if not a double, I would say. It's not a double because there's no way Spinosaurus is actually out in the open ocean helping mosasaurs hunt for food.
Yeah, that made no sense.
Yeah, I'm rounding first. I'm looking at it, but it turns out that the shortstop just a wild play, kept it in bounds. I got to take my single, but I'm on base with that. But yeah, and even when you see them in comparison to the mosasaur, it's just unbelievable because the mosasaur is on screen like 3 times bigger than these things. Like, why would you need their help in hunting people McNuggets, right? I mean, people were not that much to eat for these guys. They need whales. They need that Dunkleosteus, right? They need some sizable food. I never understand why the dinosaur spends so much effort trying to get us. It's fun, but not making a lot of sense. For the Mosasaurus itself, this one ended up being a foul tip, and it's too bad because like the first time we see Mosasaurus in Jurassic World, it's modeled really well and it's impressive and it jumps out of the water, right? It eats the shark. Now it's like twice as long as as the biggest Mosasaurus in history. And I remember being just nerding out watching it, and it just my stupid nerd mind is going like, oh, the average great white shark is about 13 feet long, and this animal's jaw is like, okay, well, it's a little large, but okay, even if I go in canon, this is an oversized Mosasaurus. It's fine. When you watch it, and it's going 25 knots right next to the boat, right? I mean, the boat and it are screaming along. The tail is not moving at all. It's absolutely dead straight, like Jaws's fin in the water. And the reason that this matters for your moviegoers that are once again thinking like, are the paleontologists really going to do like, yeah, we got to do this because this animal doesn't swim with its flippers. It doesn't dog paddle really fast, right? It's not Fezzik.
Only dog paddle.
Only dog paddle. Right? It needs its tail to actually pump back and forth like a crocodile or like a shark. And as it's going, the stupid fin is just beelining it through the water. I lean over to my phone and go, how is it moving?
It's got a little propeller underneath or something. Yeah.
I'm actually wondering if Dr. Nefario outfitted it with a fart gun. And we had something like that. We need some sort of underwater fart gun propulsion for this thing. So there's that. Yeah. So those are some of my first ones. Why don't you pick up from here? What else are we seeing as we're moving our way through the film?
Yeah, I mean, like in terms of, in terms of balls and strikes, right? I will say that I really did appreciate the Spinosaurus update. And that's where some of the other mistakes frustrated me so much, because I'm like, they actually did a really good job with this update. That accurately updates based on our current understanding, whereas where it was in 2001. One thing that just as a professor who mostly teaches biology, I was actually really excited when they said the word mutualism, even though I have no clue how what they're doing is mutualism. They used the right term. He said, it's mutualism. And then he called it symbiosis. And I was like, close, mutualism's more correct. But I was just glad to hear someone use the right term for once. But yeah, the Brachiosaurus thing, that just drove me nuts. My big gripe with this actually comes down to the entire premise. The entire premise is we need DNA from living dinosaurs. And they even ask like twice. They're like, so why do we need it from living dinosaurs? Because I'm thinking that it's possible that the screenwriters haven't seen the movie Jurassic Park. Because the entire premise was, we actually can use DNA from extinct dinosaurs, bring back dinosaurs. I'm like, so you can't get a tissue sample from a living dinosaur. You need to get it from, or, like a recently dead dinosaur. You actually have to get it from a living dinosaur, even though the whole reason that living dinosaur is a living dinosaur is because you got DNA from an extinct dinosaur. So there's that.
Clearly, you have a dizzying intellect.
And well, wait till I get going. The other thing was, okay, so they need DNA from them because they live over 100 years. First of all, I don't know how true any of that is. The life expectancies on these, how could we know that? I sure don't. But, okay, are there not animals now that live over 100 years? Galapagos tortoise, sea turtles, Greenland sharks. There's 3 right there. Greenland sharks live like 400 years.
How about really old people?
There's that.
Could you go find a centenarian and just take a blood sample maybe? I don't know.
Yeah,
it would be no idea. That would help.
I have no idea how helpful pterosaur blood is going to be at fixing human heart disease.
But we didn't even get pterosaur blood. That was another interesting gripe, is that we had blood samples from the mosasaur and from the Titanosaurus. But then when it came to getting something from the pterosaur, all of a sudden, what do we need? Egg white. We need egg white. I'm like,
nice low cholesterol alternative to the blood.
I know. Yeah. I mean, I lived through the 90s when we had those omelets. They weren't good.
Yeah.
So I was like, wait a minute, why do you need a syringe with a hole the size of my finger, like going into this egg? Like that's rough.
That egg's not going to be okay. But the other, just as another nitpick, when they're trying to kind of write some gobbledygook to explain why they can't just use the DNA. They're like, oh, because we can't synthesize the genes, something, hemoglobin deteriorates. And I'm like, hemoglobin's not a gene, it's a protein. Also, in an earlier Jurassic World movie, one of the children explains the mechanism whereby hemoglobin can stick around. Right? Or maybe not hemoglobin, but soft tissue can stick around, which is a whole, like, we won't get into that right now. But there's at least some awareness in this world of the people who've been involved in these movies that like proteins can stick around for a little bit, just a little bit.
Yeah.
So just that whole like, in that case, those were all plot pivotal points. So that drove me kind of nuts. Anyway, sorry. I'm sure there's more fossil stuff.
It falls in your court for some of these. What did you think of the T-Rex?
I liked the swimming. I thought that was really cool. I'm trying to think what else was different about it. I mean, I liked that it wasn't practical. One gripe about this movie was there wasn't much in the way of practical effects, if any. Actually, I don't think there were any practical effects done in this movie. But, it didn't make a lot of sense to me that they're all going after such small morsels. I don't know. What were your thoughts on the T-Rex?
Yeah, initially I came out of it and went, the T-Rex scene was entirely forgettable, right? It was literally just to move us along. Like that's what the team was doing. They were moving along in the river. The T-Rex was moving along. We ran out of red shirts, so there wasn't anybody to eat, right? You knew at this point that the family's entirely safe. And so I'm not worried about them.
The little girl's not going to get it. Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's no way that can happen. And also the T-Rex, I think, even was bigger than it needed to be. Just one of the things that just kept happening in this film is everything was just so dang big. Mosasaurus is enormous. I know it's Jurassic World canon. Fine. The kaijus are just D-Rex is too big. The Titanosaurus is impossibly large. I mean, sauropods are already big, and in Jurassic World we've got these big things. They're already very impressive. But this thing is the size of like the Chrysler Building. It's just unfathomably large, and I think that makes it difficult for the audience when all of a sudden, like, I lose scale, I lose perspective, I lose believability because this thing is so huge. Like, its tail is like 80 feet long and whipping around and doing all these cool things, which, you know, I'm looking at it going, yeah, it's not the way that a Titanosaurus tail is going to work anyway, because they're built more like brachiosaurs with long but shorter tails than, say, like the Apatosaurus and the Diplodocus tails are. So not going to expect that. But also, that was a funny thing. We talked about the tall grass, right? We get into the tall grass and we're all worried. You and I are worried about raptors. And then all of a sudden something happens, and these gargantuan titanosaurs apparently rise up out of the tall grass.
Yeah, the tail rises up, and you're like, oh, that's really cool. And how did you miss that thing right there?
How did you miss the 3-story building that it would be laying down on the ground? You know, like the tall grass is shoulder high, so it can hide raptors. It can't hide something that is 30 feet tall at the shoulder. This was, I remember just kind of like laughing out loud. My wife actually, when she saw the Spinosaurus, there's one brief moment where you see it on the beach, and then it slides out into the water. My wife actually leaned over. She's like, "Oh, that was really cool. Did you see that?" I was like, you know, going back to, they modeled that one really well. And then when you get to these other things, you're like, wow, they really didn't do it. I thought the Quetzalcoatlus was modeled fairly well until it had to go rock climbing. You know, it's probably not going to happen. You know, its facial structure for paleontology wasn't quite right, probably, but you know, that's more inside poker on that one. I'll give them, you know, some latitude there. We don't have complete fossils for that one.
And the size was, they cranked the size way down on it, right?
Yeah, they had to fit it in the cave, I guess.
They had to fit it in the cave. They could have made the cave bigger, but I did think that was interesting because, like, well, we just saw Quetzalcoatlus in Jurassic World Dominion at actual size, taking down a plane. One of the best scenes in any of the Jurassic movies, I think. And so, I was seeing it. I was like, well, the skull is shaped different. The size is different. Is it possible they got the wrong pterosaur here? So that was my concern, but I'm glad you helped confirm that it was more accurate than I thought it was. They just made it smaller. So good to know.
I think so. The one thing that was a little weird again was the crest on the face. And when I first saw that in the museum, when he pointed out, you know, our third dinosaur, I remember going like, Quetzalcoatlus doesn't have like this big, huge crest on the front of its face. Like it's part of a group in paleontology called the Asdarchids, and they've got fairly long, thin beaks, as far as I know. Like really, really long beaks. But you know, okay, they're going to do it. But it actually, when I finally saw it on screen, I wasn't even sure if it was the same face as what was in the museum earlier in the movie. I think I'm wrong on that, but it didn't quite look, I think, quite there. That's for that. Yeah. So, you know, those are the real dinosaurs, right? That's the stuff. And, you know, we've got our cute little ceratopsian that ends up, you know, running around in a backpack. So we've got kind of Dora the Explorer dinosaur edition happening, which was, you know, cute and all. We get a moment with a raptor, but it immediately gets eaten by the Mutodon, right? So as we think like, what didn't work? I already mentioned the D-Rex is a kaiju. The Mutodon is this raptor pterosaur hybrid, and it's just weird. It doesn't work. And it was menacing enough. It was certainly, you know, they worked on it as fairly well as being a menacing creature. It was terrifying. This thing comes out of the air and you know, takes out a raptor, apparently quite violently off screen. It doesn't sound good.
And then drags it away, even though it's roughly the same size. It flies off with it. But mutants, whatever, right?
All you have to do is say genetically modified organism, and physics need not apply in your film.
Yeah, exactly.
And that, you know, the same problem was in the original Jurassic World when you had a pterosaur come down and was trying to grab onto a little triceratops, a baby triceratops. Like this baby triceratops is weighing like 250, 300 pounds. It's a little porker. And you got like this probably 60-pound pterosaur that's, lifting it off the ground. Like, physics just don't work that way.
Well, and I feel like we'll go ahead and give a little shout out to our friend Matt McLean, as he would point out whenever he talks about pterosaurs that they can't grab with their feet.
Right.
In general, right? Like they're just, it'd be like us grabbing something with our toes, maybe a little, but you're not grabbing anything substantially with it. And watch Jurassic Park 3, and man, the pterosaur scene is awesome. But they're grabbing stuff with their feet. But otherwise, that scene is excellent. And there's just an awful lot of that kind of nonsense in here. I think, in terms of the scientific accuracies, inaccuracies, much longer list of inaccuracies. Any last minute stuff on that before we crack the soda on the theology side?
Well, I don't know if this movie is going to end the Jurassic World franchise or not. Part of me sort of hopes that it does, because, they had 2 paleontologists who were their, consultants on this film. At least it's listed as Stephen Brissett, who's a great paleontologist, absolutely outstanding paleontologist, and Tom Holtz, very good paleontologist, really, really good. He's got a textbook on dinosaurs. And I was
going to say, if my Brissett book was nearby, it's not.
Mine's at the other office. I mean, these guys are both excellent, not only paleontologists, dinosaur paleontologists.
Yeah.
And no doubt they consulted them, and it's a movie, right? So you're going to get latitude. You're going to say, okay, we're going to make these things bigger. We want to give the sauropods these weird little frills on the back, which may or may not be a nod to Godzilla films, where there is a Titanosaurus that has like this big, weird lizardy frill on its back. So if you go back to the old Godzilla films and whatnot, you get Titanosaurus, and it's got this bizarre frill. So it's got a couple of those, and you can say, okay, that's fine. I can do that. You want to make them giant. It reduces my believability, but if you want to do it, it's okay. But it also, just hits me that there's so many ways in which this movie didn't consult people who knew what was going on. Spielberg, he knew how to do this job, and he knew how to get people on board to make these things such that first time that you see them in the movie, when I was there back in, 3,000 years ago, Gandalf, and you could just about believe that dinosaurs were brought back to life. It was, the technology jump for that movie from everything past was that big.
Yeah.
But Spielberg also, as you mentioned, with practical effects, right? He mixed the CGI with the practical. He knew that CGI wasn't going to be able to carry the day. Now our CGI can carry the day, but they just rely on it too much. They decide, we're just going to make what we want. We want to Mutodon. Okay. I don't know how much they consulted the paleontologist for that one, because that one had a lot of weird features to it. Mm-hmm. The D-Rex, we're going to consult other movies from different universes. We need a little bit of Star Wars. We need a little bit of Alien. We need a little bit of who knows what else. I don't know. Cthulhu, something. So I just, it seemed to me like it was lazy.
Yeah.
It was lazy in ways that even Fallen Kingdom and Dominion, as much as I didn't find them compelling, those movies weren't lazy about what they were doing. This movie, I think, was lazy.
Yeah, I think lazy is a good word for it. I think that there's probably a lot of cooks in the kitchen on this one. That would be my impression, is that there was a good script, probably. There was good advice being given in terms of the consultants, but that there was probably 10 or 12 producers or some other stakeholder who was involved who wanted to have some this or that say in the script and in the characters and in the dinosaurs, and to the point where you end up with, just what is it they say? A camel is a horse made by committee. I mean, I guess a Mutodon is a dinosaur made by committee. I mean, the whole thing, it just is close-ish, but you could tell that there were some mistakes made early on in the process. They weren't listening to the right people. The mistakes that were made were easy to fix. At least some of them were. Yeah. And some of the ones that they got right were actually impressive. And I didn't think they were going to knock out the Spinosaurus the way they did. But in any case, there was, and as one quick thing, and this is jumping back a little bit to the older ones, dinosaurs are not bulletproof. I feel the need to say that because they don't seem to know that in these movies. When the dinosaurs are killing people, it does seem like the people are rarely, if ever, armed or able to shoot them. I will give ScarJo this. She at least shot that one Mutodon thing. And I was like, okay, see, they're not bulletproof. But there's
a gun that had been sitting out in a tropical rainforest for 7 years.
Yeah, exactly.
The firing pin ain't going to work. I was told that by my daughter's boyfriend.
There you go.
But yeah, the one guy who does have a gun at the beginning on our mercenary crew, he's the first one to go.
Yeah.
I remember watching the scene where he's shooting at the Spinosaurs and the Mosasaurus, and like he's recoiling the gun before the bullets go.
Oh,
like,
wow.
He's like physically pulling it back, like almost like he's on script going bam, 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 bam.
They couldn't afford blanks. He said, we'll do it in post.
And he's supposed to be the best. He's the security detail guy. Like we lose him early on and he's a jerk and like we don't care. Yeah. But it was like, wow, even those kinds of details, people just, get a special forces guy. If all of these people are supposed to be on special forces, get one special forces person. Yeah. And have them consult. And that's why some movies do it really well. Well,
I was going to say, I would love to drop John Wick into the Jurassic World, right? Because, he's incredibly competent. Those films are very careful in the weapons handling and all of that stuff. And I was just thinking, man, he would it wouldn't be a problem. But there's a scene in Jurassic World Dominion I feel the need to rant about because I just watched it recently, where one of the characters, I forget his name, from Jurassic World is there. There's 4 guys. They all have weapons drawn. And then the lady lets out the Atrociraptors, like, bigger velociraptors. And they're all like, oh no. And I'm like, you got guns. You got guns. The guns are aimed on them. And then they get the laser targets and they go to attack them. They all put their guns away and run. And a couple of them die. And the rest almost die. And I'm just like, what? They just shoot them. What are you doing? But
let that be a lesson to you. If you're gonna bring a gun, use it.
If you're gonna bring a gun to a dinosaur fight, then use the gun.
Use the gun.
But that actually is a good segue to our theology segment. And so this has obviously been a pretty popcorn heavy, little science heavy episode for us. But there's a little bit that we need to talk about, even though it was a bit carbonated on the theology side. And that actually tied in, I thought, pretty well, this whole idea of whether or not to kill a dinosaur. There's this great line that fits in well with the Jurassic franchise, because the Jurassic franchise is all about mankind's place in nature, where we are, what our role is in nature. And asking, just because we can do something doesn't mean that we should do it, as Ian Malcolm so brilliantly put it in the first Jurassic Park. But in this film, we actually get the concept of sin brought up. I can't remember the last time I heard someone say the word sin in a movie. I'm sure it's been somewhat recent, but it's rare enough that it doesn't jump out to my memory. When they're discussing whether or not to kill the dinosaurs, and I forget the specific context because I may have been blanking on the not super interesting storyline or characters for just a moment. But then Harry says, they ask, are you telling me it's a crime to kill a dinosaur? Harry says, or Henry, or whatever his name was, says, no, it's a sin. I'm telling you it's a sin to kill a dinosaur. And I was like, I'm interested. What does that mean? Is it a sin to do this? I'm just curious, did that line jump out to you?
It did. And given, as you nicely put, the emphasis on humans' place in nature, and the way that the Jurassic World franchise especially moved us into ultimately Ian Malcolm's statement, we don't have dominion. We only think we have dominion, but we are subject basically to the world around us. So completely turning a biblical concept on its head and saying, no, the Bible is entirely wrong on this. And yet here we have good Dr. Loomis telling us that there's a sin. And it's a powerful line. It hits, I think, really well. And my ears certainly perked up with that. And I thought I thought his character could get away with saying it, which was interesting because there's nothing particularly religious about it. He's using it for effect. You don't get the sense that he has any sort of belief, Christian belief or concept like that. but that it is such a, that it's more than crime. This is wickedness to do this sort of thing. This is a person who loves dinosaurs so much, has spent his whole life studying them, wants to be near them, right? Willing to go on this highly illegal mission to go get some, just so that, because he's bullied into it by Krebs. Basically you've just gone to a zoo is all you've ever done. You've never even really seen a dinosaur. And so he gets bullied into it, but he's bullied into it apparently very easily because this is his life's dream. And, I thought that was interesting, but they never went anywhere with it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. They don't deliver on it, and that's fine. I guess I was thinking it was probably just a throwaway line. I really just ran with it a lot more than they probably intended it. But one thing that jumps out to me, I like that you mentioned that, he's using it for effect, and it's out of the respect that he has for these creatures. I really think that. So jumping back, one of the reasons that we do what we do at Popcorn Theology is because we believe that films are made by image bearers. Even movies that are made by non-believers are made by people who bear God's image. And so they can't help but point back to their creator in the way that they create. And I think that we're seeing a little bit of that here, where he's saying damaging the created world is damaging something that is sacred. There's this notion of something being sacred. And I thought that is pretty close to what the biblical worldview would say about this. It's not a one-to-one, and I would even push back on his statement, but I do think that there is something to be said for the value that he places on these creatures. It is not strictly naturalism the way that he may purport it to be, but the question, of whether or not it is a sin to kill them. I mean, so we get this command in Scripture where, despite what Ian Malcolm says, we are not subservient to nature or subordinate to it. We do, in fact, have dominion, as is denied in the film Jurassic World Dominion. We're created in God's image. We're given responsibility to steward, according to Genesis 1:28, every living thing that moves on the earth, even if it moves in a way that should require its tail to move, but doesn't for some reason. But because of the fallen kingdom that we live in, this is the result of sin, we've done a really poor job of this. And creatures have gone extinct as a result of human involvement and overhunting. Passenger pigeon, the American bison, almost, elephant birds, dodos, the thylacine, Tasmanian wolf, so many creatures that we've hunted to extinction or destroyed their habitats. And this poor stewardship of the planet is an indicator that we are, in fact, responsible. And so that's just I could easily spend a lot more time on this, but it's to say that we don't have dominion, and then to also say that we've done a poor job caring for the planet is contradictory. Mm-hmm. We are in charge and we've done a poor job. It can't be, well, we're not in charge and we've screwed it up. No, we are capable of doing this. And there was just some really interesting concepts that were just thrown in there, and then they, just went on with it. Unlike Jurassic Park, which actually expands on and delivers on these. But the question of sin I thought was really interesting, because it's obvious that poor stewardship, that we stewarded poorly, right? That there's plenty of examples of that. But the question then is that sinful? So from a theology perspective, I think that's a really important question. Is it a sin to be a poor steward, right? And so if we were to, not recycle, for example, or if we were to use poor fuel economy, or to leave the door open and air condition the neighborhood, or to, overfish, or, to do any number of things that are irresponsible environmentally, is that actually sinful? I'm curious what your thoughts are on that kind of comparison of sin with poor stewardship.
That's a really good question. And I expect that it would fall in kind of a biblical spectrum, right? So when we think of the Mosaic law as a connection point to this, because of course, the dominion mandate is in Genesis, part of the Pentateuch. We've got the law, and there are various different kinds of sins, and different sorts of things that you have to do in order to make amends remedy those. So with poor stewardship, sometimes it is sin because if you go and purposefully do something to harm another person, or thinking on a more stewardship example, God says when you go into the land and you begin to take the land, you cannot salt the fields, right? You cannot lay waste to the agricultural and the areas of these places. That will be, the Bible says, anathema, right? That is sin to do. And later on in the Bible, we find examples of kings and warriors that do that very thing. All right, this is not good. You are despoiling the land. On the other hand, you've got other types of sins that, or not sins, you've got other sorts of things that make you ritually unclean, right? And you touch a dead body. Was that sinful? No, you might have had to have cared for that body, right? You've got to get the diseased body or what could be a diseased body out of the camp. But what's going to happen is that, for the next little while, you're going to have to do certain ceremonial washings. You're going to have to stay outside of the camp. You're going to have to do these sorts of things so that you can come back in. And you haven't done anything wrong, but you are unclean. So in stewardship, there could be some things that we do that basically make us unclean, right? We do some things that are necessary, and sometimes there's every action has consequences. That's something I would tell my students when I was teaching environmental classes. Yeah. Every action has consequences. Some of those consequences are big and highly problematic, and we should assess whether or not we should do those. Others, we just have to kind of go, well, this is going to be the consequence of doing this. If you want to have, computers and phones in which you're watching popcorn theology, right? That means we have to mine things. We've got to put holes in the ground and extract metals. Now, how do we do that in such a way that is most responsible? That becomes like policy and issues, but it's a spiritual issue as well. If I'm going to take something from God's world that I think he's put there so that we can actually use it, that's part of it. The world is here for our use. How do we do that wisely? If we make a hole in the ground, when we're done with that hole in the ground, do we fill it back up again? Or do we do something in order to make it a good ecosystem? Could we turn it into a lake or a pond or what have you, right? Are these remediation laws in the United States, and they come out of a recognition that we are responsible. And that comes back from a biblical injunction for responsibility. Yeah. So is it a sin to kill a dinosaur? That's a good question, because we decided to make dinosaurs in the first place.
Yeah.
And if something goes wrong with them, it's probably incumbent upon us to fix that. That might entail killing a dinosaur, especially if that dinosaur is going to take the life of an image bearer. If it's going to kill a human being, it's okay. And you pointed out, people were actually okay with trying to kill the dinosaur, the dinosaurs, the Mosasaurus and the Spinosaurus, the real dinosaurs, that were trying to kill them on the boat.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were trying to get the blood from the Mosasaur, but they were trying to kill the Spinosaurs. Okay, that's fine. And that's a bit of a departure from some of the other aspects of the movies.
It is a big departure. And I was trying to think back in the Jurassic sort of franchise, if anyone has ever actually killed a dinosaur, or if they have even attempted to. There have been a couple stragglers who have tried or attempted, and but for the most part, they just don't do that. They just run, try and escape them, blah, blah, blah. Maybe because it makes for better film. Maybe it's less morally suspect. But this whole idea of, whether or not you should kill them is, if you're defending human life and animal life are distinctly different. Humans are image bearers of God with innate dignity, value, and self-worth, whereas dinosaurs are animals, right? And so there's a key distinction there that animals should be killed if they take life. That's in the Bible too, right? If an animal is responsible for the death of a human, then their life is forfeit, just like the life of a human is if they take another person's life. This is Genesis 9, right after the flood kind of stuff. But this overall question of, is the stewardship a problem, right? Because what could one argue? Was it a sin for us to hunt the dodo to extinction? Was it a sin for the Tasmanian tiger to be wiped out? I mean, I think it's a tragedy for sure. In terms of sin, it's a little bit less clear. But it did remind me as well, there's a whole category of things that I think are unwise, that come with consequences, that may be sinful in some instances, but are not explicitly outright described as sinful in Scripture. Like, for example, I think gambling might be in this category. I think gambling is acutely unwise, very unwise, but I don't think that it is explicitly sinful. I think that if one person places a bet once in a while, could it be acceptable? Sure. But if somebody is incredibly irresponsible with it, that could be a moral failing. That could be sinful. They lost the house. They bet the house on the ponies, if you will. And so I think that it could perhaps fall into that category because we have, as believers, the Holy Spirit acting in our hearts to guide us. James 4:17 says that avoiding that guidance is sinful. It says, whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is sin. That actually holds us to a higher standard than the law because we're supposed to listen to our conscience, listen to the Holy Spirit within us, and act in accordance with that. And if we're told not to do this or that environmentally harmful thing, and we ignore that, then I think it could fall into the category of sin in the same way that if we are told to share the gospel with someone and we don't, could that be sinful? I don't know if that's a super fair comparison. I know they're not on equal footing in terms of the consequences, but what if you walk past someone who's asking for money? Is it sinful to walk past them and to not help them? I don't know. I don't think that necessarily that answer can be easily given for everyone. But if the Lord is compelling your heart to give to them or to minister to them in some way, and you ignore that, the Bible says that that is sinful. So I know that's maybe it seems a little convoluted, but to this ultimate question, are things that are not sinful still bad? Well, they still have consequences. Matthew 25, there's the parable of the talents, right? So we've got the three servants who were given different amounts of money from their master. One of them, he didn't squander it. He just didn't invest it wisely. And if you read the master's rebuke, I'll save you, you can go do that on your own. But Matthew 25:14 through 29 is this 26 through 30 is the rebuke. And it sounds like he's casting him into hell. Right. And this is a passage not about environmental stewardship, not about killing dinosaurs. Don't think that's in the Bible, but it is about, being a wise steward, and in particular of the gospel. And so there are consequences that come with things that are unwise, even if perhaps they fall into that somewhat gray category. I don't know. It was kind of a tricky question because a lot of people kind of soapbox and moralize on environmental issues. And it's easy to do that and not to suss out the distinctions between sin and unwise behavior. And I won't claim to have all the answers on this, but do you have any other thoughts on that?
No, I think that covers a lot of the bases. And what we get out of I think what we can pull a bit from Henry's statement, that it's a sin to kill a dinosaur, is that he recognizes that it's not necessary to kill a dinosaur. It's almost like, the guy that's talking to him flippantly. I think it's our first red shirt probably that even is the one that says that you think it's you think it's a crime to kill a dinosaur. And he said, I think it's a sin. We get his understanding of his dedication to the dinosaurs, and also that he probably doesn't think that this is necessary. From his mind, he's going on something. He's got to get blood samples and egg, but there should be no reason to do anything like this. But that being said, we do have that long-standing Jurassic World of kind of like, yeah, but we created their world and then we decided to go into it, and that's our bad. We made the mistake of coming in here. And every movie is pretty much, we made the mistake of coming to where the dinosaurs are. We don't belong, and we're lucky to get away with our lives.
Yeah.
And that pushes against that idea that we have dominion, that we have places that, right, there are no places on the earth where we should not have dominion. God gave us the dominion over the birds of the air and the fish of the sea. Like, I'm not sure how it works that we have those kinds of dominion, especially if you're talking to an ancient Israelite and he's standing at the water looking at the ocean going, yeah, I don't feel like I got dominion over much of anything in there.
Yeah.
But yet God says you do. And that's because as his image bearers, we are the vice regents. We are his physical representatives on Earth. You know, it's a point where C.S. Lewis gets it right in the Chronicles of Narnia when our friend the faun, Mr. Tumnus, speaks to Lucy and says, "You're a daughter of Eve." And she's like, "No, my mom's name is, you know, something else." And he says, no, you are human, aren't you? Right? Because in those books, being human meant you are God's representative. And all the Narnians bow down to these little kids, right, and teenagers, because the Lord's presence is reflected through them. Jurassic Park has none of that, right?
Right.
Jurassic Park gives no purchase to the image of God. It is easily extinguished, and sad to say, we cheer on some of the extinguishing as we watch the movies, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say it's a sin. Yeah. Is it a sin to kill a dinosaur? No. It's probably unwise to go visit.
Yeah.
It's and if you have to kill them, you have to kill them. But yeah, the movie's predicated on we just don't belong here, and that's what we have to reject. Thinking of your 3 R's, you know, of popcorn theology. That's something that we have to reject.
Yeah, actually, and thank you for that segue. We're going to go ahead and very briefly hit up our lightning round, where we're going to ever so quickly discuss a couple of those things, because in any story, there are concepts that we need to reject from a biblical worldview, some that we should receive, and then some that we can redeem, kind of massage them and say, it's close. And if we just modify this point in line with the biblical worldview, then we can see how close it is. In terms of reject points, yeah, I completely agree that idea of the line in this movie was, we don't rule the earth. We just think we do. Very reminiscent of Ian Malcolm's line, you know, we're not only do we not have dominion over nature, we are subordinate to it. That is, I think, I mean, blasphemous, I guess, is an okay word for that, because it does, in fact, inaccurately describe our relationship to creation and to the Creator. We are, like you said, representatives of God on this earth. We're supposed to take care of it. And even the non-believer who rejects that notion knows that, because they apply moral failing to humans that do a poor job of managing, right? We don't apply moral failing to cockroaches or to invasive species. The zebra mussel is not a moral creature that we condemn for it being an invasive species. Even though it's doing tons and tons of damage, we say we use that term for humans because they recognize that there's a failing there. Anyway, yeah, as far as other reject points, there was this interesting line. He said, you know, our intelligence just gave us the capacity to destroy ourselves. I just thought that was interesting. I want to reject that. There's probably some aspect of truth buried in there, but overall it's like, well, no, that's not all that intelligence is. Anyway, any other points in terms of reject, or for that matter, anything that we should receive from a biblical worldview?
I mean, there's a little bit to I mean, the movie, again, I want to like it.
It's hard. It's hard.
It's tough. There's some good points. There's a poignant scene with Delgado, the dad, and Javier sitting around. Javier, you know, knowing that he's a loser, not understanding, you know, what it is that his girlfriend even sees in him. For his part, Delgado doesn't see anything in him either, and neither does the audience. There's not much.
No one sees it.
Guy. Yeah. And yet he's willing to invest in him because his daughter cares for him. He's willing to set aside, you know, his own desires so that his daughter can have a good relationship. I can take some of that. You know, it's not a full-born affirmation because honestly, they're living in sin.
Yeah,
it's not a great situation. I don't know enough about the character because we just don't learn enough about the character to find out if he's ultimately even really a redeemable character, or if he's just going to be an idiot for the rest of time. Probably he has a couple of okay moments, but nothing that you end up thinking like, oh no, this guy's growing and he's a solid person at the end. He's still kind of idiot.
Yeah, he's a putz for sure. Yeah,
he is. But the family sticking together, not willing to leave each other, that's good. You can find that in a lot of things, but like we're having to scrape a little tough here because they just don't give us a lot to work with. It was actually pretty funny though, in the final scene where we get to the old InGen facility and both of the parties finally make it and find each other. They're yelling for each other and they're like 20 yards apart.
Yeah,
whatever. Fine, sure. But all the lights come on, and all of a sudden, my wife picked this up. The song "Stand by Me" is playing. Now we don't know why all the lights turn on. Like the generator goes on. Like why now? Does it do this every night? Like is this like some dance party that happens at InGen, for nobody every evening? I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know.
But anyway, "Stand by Me" starts playing out, blaring across the screen, and the first thing that somebody says is, "Okay, let's split up." Like the song is "Stand by Me," literally "Stand by." That was funny. That was pretty funny. But the family actually does stay together. They stand by each other in that scene. They end up going into the convenience store together and having to deal with the Mutodon. The others, running off and eventually attracting far worse things in all sense of the term, with the D-Rex. So there is that togetherness and that connection of family. And in this case, unlike what we see in Jurassic Park 1, 2, and 3, the family is actually intact. Don't have a broken family. And that's surprising actually for a Jurassic Park World film. Now in Jurassic World, you get Chris Pratt and you get, what's her name?
Bryce Dallas Howard.
Yeah. So they create a family nucleus of their own, and their job is to stick together. So you have that, which is better, I think, from a standpoint of seeing family in those movies. And in this one, the family's together through thick and thin. For Jurassic Park, that was actually, now that I think about it, pretty surprising and really good. Even if the boyfriend's an idiot, it's like, well, he's our idiot. We're not going to let him die. As much as we can't, as much as the fact that they jump,
because what earns the dad's respect is that when she falls off the boat, he jumps in after her, and there's dinosaurs in the water, right? That's okay. Like I was really hoping that they would go further with developing his character. Yeah, and I'm sure again there's a draft or a deleted scene or something that does that, but we didn't see it. And then the dad and the little daughter jump in too, because they're going to stay together. These folks have played D&D. They know that you don't split up the party, right? They know. But ultimately, but
everyone's a level 1 mage, dude. Like they can barely make fire. They can make fire. They do make that on screen, but like.
No, they just get really lucky though. They keep rolling nat 20s at all the times when everyone else is rolling nat zeros. I mean, it's pretty impressive. They keep getting through all these situations. But yeah, I thought as well as a quick receive, jumping a little bit, this concept of family. I just rewatched Dominion. There's this really great storyline in that with Maisie where they're not her parents at the beginning, but then they become her parents. She's referring to them. This gorgeous image of adoption, which is a beautiful picture of the gospel. I just loved seeing that in Jurassic World Dominion, and perhaps one reason it bumped up a little bit in my ranking. But additionally, in just the titles, I just something quick we can redeem just from the Jurassic World movie titles, right? So we've got Jurassic World, we've got Fallen Kingdom, then we have Dominion, and then we have Rebirth. All right. If we look at the grand story of Scripture, we have creation, we have fall, we have redemption, and restoration. Just throwing that out there. It's not one for one, but it's kind of close. And unfortunately, Rebirth didn't restore anything, the Rebirth film. But in any case, I just think that there is something. There's something there. They're probably not intentionally going for it. I was curious what you thought of this line, "Science is for all of us, not for some of us."
It plays well into the current esprit de corps in a lot of science. And the question of when you have knowledge, what do you do with it? Do you keep it private, or do you let it out for everybody to have? And here in the United States, we're having these kinds of questions, and also in Europe, especially in the United States, because we have all these tax dollars that go to scientific research. They go to colleges and universities, they go to laboratories and whatnot, and then publications happen, and those publications end up behind paywall journals that your library has to have access to. You got to pay for. So here we've got it's an interesting question, because if you've got research that was done using public funds, should not the results of that be made publicly available, right? So there's a big push for open source, and Henry Loomis is the voice of that push in science right now. And as I was thinking about that, I'm glad that you brought it up, because when the COVID-19 virus first started showing up in China, before all the craziness, but when things started going kind of south in China, what happened was they were able to sequence the virus, right? And the sequence was made open source. You can go online right now. You can download any of the variants of the COVID-19 virus. Were the drugs free? As I thought about this, no, they weren't. And here you've got Parkergenics that is doing everything that they can in order to keep this apparently secret, and Loomis who wants to make it public. And in the end, it's still Parkergenics, which would be like one of the only companies that would be able to do anything with the information. So it's not just that information needs to be freely available. That's one aspect. But if you made the information freely available, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden drugs are $2 a pill.
Right.
What it means now is that the people who have the equipment and the expertise to possibly make something out of this can do that, but they're still going to patent it. They're still going to end up, having to put out a whole bunch of research money, even if it wasn't millions and millions of dollars to get the dinosaurs, whatever it happens to be. So I ended up thinking later on about Loomis's statement and going, it wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have mattered if we made this free and available to the world, because there still would be like 6 companies that might be able to do something with it, and they would still reap tremendous profits. Some of those profits would be tremendously well earned and deserved, right? Speaking again as a guy who owns a company, when we make a product, we have to price it in such a way that we make profit for that, right? I've got to pay my people. I've got to pay for the lights. I've got to pay for the internet. I've got to pay for insurance. I got to pay myself, all this sort of stuff. And so when you buy something, you're paying for a whole lot of things. And drug companies are going to be the same way. And we might kvetch and complain about how much some of these things cost. And that might be legitimate, right? There's some room to argue about this. But the movies claim that making this open source, like when Loomis says, like, we'll open source it, it's like this like big revelation. And anybody who's been in science would be like, oh,
great. Yeah.
Right. That just means I'm going to have to pay $3,000 to the journal in order to get it published, because they're going to charge me.
And then, like you said, to actually do anything with it, because, okay, so now you've got some DNA from a, dinosaur.
Yeah.
That doesn't equate to medication. I mean, so that definitely went through my mind as well, which is that, maybe off the beaten path for us in terms of popcorn theology, but yeah, the economics of patent law and of, R&D, and the fact that, economics exists and the supply and demand is relevant, and that things can't just be free because you think they should be free. I bristled at that a bit. I like the statement, in isolation, science is for all of us, not some of us. I mean, that struck me a bit as a kind of general revelation point. But yeah, in terms of the way it was applied, that, this statement about, the drug prices, that they mark up the drug prices. I mean, drug prices are often too high, but there's good ways to solve that, which is greater competition between companies. I thought that there was nuance to that was obviously missing. Big shocker from a movie like this, right?
And well in keeping with, what's happened in all the previous Jurassic types of movies, you've got evil corporations, right? It's just kind of that's it. They're either selling amusement park tickets, or they're selling stuff to the military, or they're a private health company, and we can all hate every one of these, right? Groups.
Yeah, or there's actual agrochemical company one.
That's right.
Or the one we haven't gotten is oil. The one kind of cliched mustache twirling villain that we haven't gotten in a Jurassic World movie is oil developers.
Jurassic,
that'll be the next
Jurassic
one.
World fracking is coming next.
There we go.
That'll be bad. So, but this gets us also kind of to the motivation of each of our characters as to what are they doing and why are they doing it. And Scarlett Johansson's character, Dora, she makes a shift from she's in it for the money because she wants to get out of what she's doing, right? She's going to make $10 million on this job, or, whatever, 20 million, because they strong-armed him. Loomis is in this because he loves dinosaurs, and Loomis is in this because he wants to help people. So he's the one whose motivations are pure as the driven snow, right? And our lead bad guy, Krebs, he's all in it for the money. So we got people who are in it for the money. We have more people who are in it for the money. All the other mercenaries are in it for the money. The Delgado family isn't in it for anything. They just want to live.
Just want to survive, yeah.
And Loomis is the only person who's really here for laudable reasons.
And he came for the money is the other thing too. I mean, in the similar vein to Jurassic Park and Jurassic Park 3, which are quests of Alan Grant to get research funding. Ultimately, that's why he goes along on any of this.
Yeah.
We see that this is kind of a similar thing. It's like, hey, you want to fund your museum? Go do something highly illegal to do that. You're gonna break bad as a dinosaur hunter in order to fund your museum because people aren't buying tickets. But yeah, ultimately he's willing to walk away from that. There was a gap there. There was a sort of thematic and narrative gap between his motivation and the actual issue that I don't think they connected super well. But that being said, it's still a valid discussion point, even if they executed it poorly.
Yeah.
So,
and that kind of brings in the movie, right? They had there was potential here. It was real potential for this film, and the execution was just sloppy. The writing, the lines were rough at times. There were some good elements. They had so many nods back to the other movies that were really touching and well done, and either played to type or played against the type in interesting ways. But the net result for that was that I wish that I was watching the other movies.
Yeah.
While I'm watching this one, right? And you're like, oh wow, we're in the tall grass, and we're not like, well, that was neat. But I remember like how cool the tall grass scene was. Or, oh, wow, there's a other scene that I'm remembering. Oh, the convenience store scene with the Delgados all trying to escape the Mutodon. And just thinking to myself, it's the kitchen scene. It's neat. It's a new, move on it. And they go through the sewer line rather than the air ducts. So they even go in the opposite direction from the first movie, which I only thought just right now, like, oh yeah, they went the other way. The kitchen scene was terrifying.
Yeah.
It was so gripping, even though it's kids. And by this time in the movie, that the kids aren't going to die. Like, it didn't matter.
You didn't know that in the first one, right?
That's true. Right. I mean,
if you read the book, the book is horrifying. Yeah. And it pulls no punches and very few people survive. The movie plays it a lot softer, but I agree. You're probably not going to watch a kid die, a kid that you've gotten emotionally attached to. But certainly by Rebirth, we know, all right, there's a family, they're going to be fine.
Right.
There's a mercenary, they're probably not going to be fine.
If the youngest daughter is not going to be eaten in a plastic life raft by a T-Rex, then the Mutodon's not going to get her, right? And it robs the audience of some of the tension. But that's one of the difficulties of making sequels, right? Is that they some of the rules. Just watch Scream 2. Right, and you'll get the rules for what have to happen with sequels.
There you go.
So
yeah, I mean, and sometimes the rules are helpful, right? Like these things exist for a reason. As someone who brought his 9-year-old son to see this movie, I was glad to know the rules so I could try and manage what he was going to see and how he would react to it.
Right.
And I think that Jurassic Park was just lightning in a bottle. There's just no other way to put it. It was perfect in so many ways. I really think it was the perfect film. Certainly one of a very small handful. And I think if the studio could recreate that, they would. I think that they're just not able to. And even though some attempts get closer than others, it's just, and that's okay. We can just appreciate that this wonderful thing existed, and maybe just let the franchise go for a bit. But I'm sure that won't happen. I'm sure that it'll come back in 5 years with some other lead that's going to try and do something. And maybe, we'll be there to talk about it, I imagine, when the time comes.
And I hopefully won't have to point my finger at Steven Spielberg and say, why were you the executive producer for this one? Because he was, again, it's like, he was in it for the paycheck, I think, on this one, as were so many others.
Yeah, just because you could doesn't mean you should.
Let's listen to Ian Malcolm far more
exactly. I hate being right all the time. Excellent. All right, we're going to roll the credits. This has been a bonus length episode, a Titanosaur-sized episode. Marcus, thank you so much for joining us. I want to encourage everyone, check out cornerstone-edsupply.com. Pick up a copy of Perspectives on the Historic Adam and Eve. Again, Marcus, thanks so much for joining.
Dave, this is so much fun. It's delightful to be on the program and get a chance to be with you, and look forward to seeing more of you and your colleagues on Popcorn Theology in the next episode you do.
Yeah, whatever that's going to be. I haven't looked that far. Check out our Facebook group, our social media. You'll get, updates on all the stuff that we're covering. Basically, if it's a summer blockbuster, we're going to probably hit it. So awesome. Well, in the meantime, everyone, keep engaging media, movies, TV shows, even dinosaur books from a godly perspective. And remember that you are not a mindless consumer.